have a mansion. In the post-apocalyptic world by Morning Star LL. Chapter 191, The Dark and Windy Night. The particle shield made out of faint blue particles shattered. The power compressed together was instantly released as the female assassin was blown away like a bomb, colliding against a concrete wall 10 meters away. The sound of fighting drowned the zombies nearby. The frost didn't numb their legs. Compelled by the lust for flesh, they ran toward the two of them. Under both the kinetic skeleton as well as Fury's strength, the power hammer in which the lead mutated human couldn't even lift, was put on Jiang Chen's shield and it was instantly charged again. Without a skip and a beat, like an enraged monster, he swung the hammer. A few dark green crystals flew towards him. Jiang Chen didn't avoid it. Instead, the nitrogen armor on his right arm blew the green dots away for meters. This lunatic, the person frantically lifted her pistol and pressed the trigger. The instant explosive force of laser weapon was perfectly demonstrated in the short distance. The raindrop-like blue beams exploded instantly, outshining the thick snow. Nitrogen armor could not defend against laser bullets. Jiang Chen put up the hammer to shield his head while the plastic armor layered with scattering effect deflected the 10 low-power laser bullets. Although the attack didn't manage to cause any hindrance to Jiang Chen's movement, it still forced him to lose his vision on her for a brief second. With this opportunity, the female assassin quickly jumped towards the side and avoided the thunderous blow. Boom! The concrete wall was smashed into dust as debris flew. Roar! The deep roaring sound filled the air. The disturbed zombies crowded them as they leapt toward them baring their teeth and claws. The female assassin sensed the dire situation as she swung her left hand with a metal hook. It shot straight to the top of an apartment building. Seeing this, Jiang Chen immediately gave up on the hammer as he pulled out the PK-2000 behind his back. He fired following her figure and noise. The snow made shooting challenging. However, due to fury and the desire for blood, the bullets managed to chase up to her as if they had eyes. There were whimpering sounds in the distance. He could sense that he managed to land at least 3 shots on her. He swung his gun to smash down a zombie who was leaping towards him. Calmly, Jiang Chen climbed onto the top of the half-destroyed concrete wall as he jumped to the top of the building. Perhaps it was because her legs were hit, the figure became more awkward and disorientated. After leaping through 2 more buildings, Jiang Chen successfully forced her into the corner. With her back against the wall, the female assassin held onto her bleeding right leg as she stared gravely at the approaching Jiang Chen. Looks like there is an error in the information I collected. You are not just a foolish playboy. In a mocking voice, the female assassin said. I don't know how you obtained that information. Jiang Chen shrugged. Fury was deactivated, as his eyes turned clear again. The landscape near the mansion was relatively flat, there were no tall buildings nor were anything surrounded with high walls. It was nearly impossible to observe the inside of the mansion from outside the base. She could only use the limited amount of information to analyze Jiang Chen's whereabouts. Jiang Chen was cautious in his mind. This person managed to sneak into the heart of the base. Looks like it was necessary to upgrade security. Your name? Jiang Chen stopped 5 meters away from her with a gun pointed at her head. The mask covered her face and her nose. Jiang Chen couldn't see her expression clearly. Compared to my name, shouldn't you be more worried about your own safety? The female assassin mocked as a victorious smile appeared on her face. Put down your weapon, or you could lose your hand. He had no knowledge that a giant man was standing 10 meters away with a rifle pointed directly at his arm. The killer's face carried a malevolent smile. Although the plan was to assassinate, it would be better if they could capture him alive. Not working alone? Jiang Chen let out a sigh, but he didn't put down the weapon. Instead, he glanced at the man standing meters away from him. Watch your back. Jiang Chen said mischievously. The person was suddenly alerted and immediately pressed the trigger. But the bullet didn't hit anything, because the target disappeared out of thin air. He promptly turned the gun towards his back, but there was nothing behind him either. Be careful dash. Before he could hear the shout, his consciousness was terminated. Jiang Chen, who reappeared at the same place, pulled the trigger without hesitation and the bullets penetrated through the back of the assassin's head. Then, he turned his gun towards the female assassin who was not willing to disclose her name. White blade reflected light directed at him. Jiang Chen abruptly riposted with his rifle. Ding! The dagger cut through the shell of the rifle as the female assassin used this glimpse of opportunity to leap over. Jiang Chen immediately pulled the trigger, but she was already a body distance away from him. She grabbed onto the burning gun and a second dagger appearing out of the other hand. Sparks flashed. Jiang Chen lifted his arm as the kinetic skeleton metal frame attached to the side of his arm shielded against the hit that was aimed straight to his throat. Godi! Letting go of the rifle, Jiang Chen removed the dagger slashed into the gun as he stabbed fiercely toward the female assassin's eyes. Not so much. The swinging dagger blocked the hit. She threw away the rifle in her hand as another ping-pong ball-sized crystal appeared in her hand. The crystal emitted a dark green light as fierce and determination flashed across her face. She squeezed out a few words between her teeth, "Let's die together." K, what a psychotic woman. Cold sweat rolled down his forehead. The continuous use of interdimensional travel consumed almost all the energy there was in the bracelet. What do I do? Bang dash. The sound of a gunshot interrupted the fight between the two. The bullet ripped off half of her arm as the hand holding the crystal fell to the ground. Ah! The agonizing scream almost penetrated Jiang Chen's eardrum as the female assassin that lost her arm tumbled to the back. Seeing that the assassin had fled, Jiang Chen kicked the dark green crystal away without stopping. The crystal exploded 10 meters away in midair. Light beamed down from the sky and locked onto the female assassin who was struggling to get up. She held on to her broken left arm with an agonized and frightened expression. Her two athletic but slim legs spread out on the concrete floor. Because of all the blood, such gesture did not look attractive at all. With heavy breathing, Jiang Chen threw away the dagger in his hand. He wiped off the cold sweat on his forehead, as he narrowed his eyes to look in the sky. It was the helicopter, Chunan. Chunan was piloting the helicopter. After the alarm rang, he, who was taking a stroll outside, immediately headed towards the helicopter pad. Half kneeling at the hatch door was Zhou Xiaoxia. She held a sniper rifle in her hands. Her merciless expression was completely contrary to her usual dumbfoundedness. The cross-sight in her field of vision locked onto the head of the female assassin. No need to shoot, just maintain suppression. Seeing that Jiang Chen was okay, Sun Jiao, who was standing on the side, finally let out a breath of relief as she slowly opened her mouth. When she heard that assassin broke into the mansion and that Jiang Chen and Yao Yao were attacked, her heart almost jumped out of her throat. Especially when she saw the image from the drones that Jiang Chen chased out alone, she almost burst out crying. Of course, it was only an expression. Sun Jiao would obviously not cry. She carried the laser rifle and jumped onto the helicopter. Zhou Xiaoxia didn't respond. Her black hair was disheveled because of turbulence, but the hands that were holding onto the sniper rifle were steady. Sun Jiao looked perplexed from the side of her face and she didn't say anything. She only signaled Chunan to lower the helicopter height in order to take Jiang Chen home. Sun Jiao could imagine the difficulty of sniping on the helicopter, especially with the heavy storm. With only instinct toward the weapon, she achieved this kind of accuracy? Sun Jiao began to reminisce about the past when she was active near Looting Town, the not long period of time when they worked together. Ahem, Commander, maybe you should really teach your husband? He is a leader. After all, this type of risky things should be left for us. Chunan let out a sigh as he approached the building. He maneuvered the helicopter as he said jokingly, "How should I say this? He is not a bad boss." Sun Jiao half-heartedly replied. All of her focus was on Jiang Chen. The helicopter hovered beside the roof. Before the helicopter stabilized, Sun Jiao immediately jumped to the roof and hugged Jiang Chen. He held on to the gorgeous figure as he felt her warmth. Just as Jiang Chen wanted to say something, his expression turned peculiar. He tenderly patted her on the back as he let her teeth bite into his shoulder. "Is your Han Zodiac a dog?" Jiang Chen gasped for air in exaggeration. With her face slightly red, Sun Jiao was embarrassed, but her hands still clenched tightly onto Jiang Chen. Jiang Chen noticed that her eyes were red. "Sorry for making you worry." Jiang Chen caressed the luscious hair. He looked into the reddened eyes and began to blame himself. He didn't think too much in the heat of the moment, he only followed because of pure anger. His hasty move probably disrupted the entire base. Feeling the girl in his arms calm down, Jiang Chen turned around holding her hand and looked at the already fainted female assassin. "Let's see the real face of this rat?" Anger flashed across Sun Jiao's face as her eyes narrowed. "I agree, for an unwelcomed guest, we must treat her properly." She already had plans as to how to torture this despicable person. Whip, candle. No, these punishments are too light. We will use the cruelest tortures to find out the perpetrator behind this. With laser rifle in her hand, Sun Jiao walked up as she kicked off the mask on the assassin's face without mercy. How is this possible? Sun Jiao's pupils immediately contracted as she tumbled back a few steps, her face was full of disbelief. Chapter 192, Sisters. It has been tuned, but you should be careful when you use it. Since I haven't made one in a long time, actions with high complexity could cause a program error. After tuning the numbers on the computer, Jiang Lin removed the cords on the mechanical arm and gave it to Jiang Chen. The silica gel feeling was no different than the skin. If the port in the back was not made of metal, it would almost be the same as a woman's hand. Jiang Chen played with the mechanical hand for a moment and asked casually, "What's the cost to produce one of these?" "The titanium skeleton is a bit expensive, which costs around 31 crystals. The microchip used as processor along with electronic nerve were around 20 crystals in total. To be honest, I recommend purchasing microchips from Looting Town. The chips there are not only cheap, but are also more advanced compared to the 6th Street. If we use their chips to produce kinetic skeletons, the stats in every category would improve. Oh? I'll keep an eye out. Also, did you implant the thing I told you about? Already done, this is the control terminal. Jiang Lin put a thumb-sized memory drive in Jiang Chen's hands. Jiang Chen picked up the memory drive as he directly inserted it into the end of the EP before the screen began to load. If the user had any malicious intention, the battery would be locked, and it would instantly release power that executes the user. Of course, this power could be adjusted if you don't want to kill the user right away. Beautiful. Speaking of this, do you not need to keep an eye on the kinetic skeleton production line? Jiang Chen stared at the rocket engine in the middle of the room as he asked with an odd expression. I have already assigned the responsibilities to everyone and put what they needed to do in a handbook. I am only responsible for quality assurance and tuning, as well as ranking their work performance. Jiang Lin pushed the glasses up his nose and he said proudly. The ranking was geared towards the newly joined survivors who are better known as the slaves. For those with outstanding work ethics, they would be promoted to lower citizens. Since it would not interfere with the production, Jiang Chen was too lazy to ridicule him to not stay on task. Therefore? How long would this thing stay in orbit for? Jiang Chen let out a sigh. This is not an exploration rocket. Jiang Lin scratched his head. Not an exploration rocket? Jiang Chen was confused. Precisely speaking, it's a missile capable of carrying 1,000 kilograms of combat equipment. Bang! The mechanical arm dropped to the ground. How many of this can you produce? Jiang Chen had both of his hands on Jiang Lin's shoulders as he stared at Jiang Lin passionately. Jiang Lin felt goosebumps all over his back. He took a step back and forced a laugh. This thing cannot be mass-produced. It's hard to obtain the materials, I can only say I will do my best. What the foo *k, 1,000 kilograms of load, even if it carried the ancient TNT, it would instantly evaporate half of a street. If it was switched to the concentrated bomb common on Wasteland, its power would be comparable to the mid-sized tactical nuke. Do your absolute best. Jiang Chen said sincerely. If he possessed this superweapon, it would without a doubt increase his odds in winning the war against the mutated humans. Jiang Lin took a deep breath and nodded. Jiang Chen picked up the mechanical arm off the ground and headed towards the direction of the mansion. When he entered the basement, he saw the female assassin strapped tightly on top of the operating table, as well as Sun Jia who stood on the side with a perplexed expression. The DNA results are out. Lin stretched her body after busily working on the control panels for a long time. What's the result? Sun Jiao tightly clenched onto Lin's shoulders. Because their faces were so close together, Lin's face turned slightly red and looked away. She is indeed your younger sister. When she heard the confirmation, Sun Jiao's shoulder began to slacken. Jiang Chen noticed the perplexed expression on her face, he sighed, walked to her and hugged her around the shoulder. I'll spare her. No, she almost killed you and Yao Yao. Sun Jiao had determination in her eyes, but it was soon replaced with blankness. On one side lay the only relative she had in the world. On the other side stood the person she loves. I don't want to make this difficult for you. But leave it to me. Trust me. Jiang Chen stared at her shaking eyes as he said with an assertive tone. With a blushed face, Sun Jiao lowered her head. Then I'll leave it to you. As she finished speaking, Sun Jiao pushed open the door and left the basement. Although she had thought of the countless of cruel ways to extract information from the assassin, when she realized that the assassin was actually her sister, she was no longer certain. To find her lost sister, she had covered the entire Wanghai city with her footsteps. It was until she finally met Jiang Chen did she temporarily put a pause to the journey of searching for her family. If she stayed here, Jiang Chen must feel restrained because he has to consider her feeling. Sun Jiao, who already knew the meaning of tenderness, didn't want him to feel conflicted. So she chose to leave. Seeing Sun Jiao's back, Jiang Chen sighed. This is problematic. The assassin was the female boss sister. Could the plot get any more stereotypical than this? How about you take her as part of your collection as well, since your prey limit is anyone within 10 years both ways? Lin suggested. The joke was not made at the best time. Jiang Chen narrowed his eyes. Lin frightenedly trembled and lifted her hands to cover her mouth. How did she make the crystals explode? Did you figure it out? Under a normal circumstance, the energy in the crystal is very stable. Even in a high-temperature and high-pressure environment, it would not explode. The crystals could even be cut into smaller pieces, hence why it could be used as a currency. Based on DNA analysis, she could freely change her brain wave pattern. It is likely that she changed her brain wave pattern to coincide with a special particle chain within the crystals, which resulted in resonance. Through experimental analysis, once the particle chain is disrupted, the entire crystal structure would collapse, which would instantly release all the energy. This should be an ability that evolved from genetic vaccine. Also, about the crystal dash. Lin seemed to have made a new discovery, but Jiang Chen didn't have the mood to be thinking about other things. I see, go back first, I'll find you later. He interrupted and ordered in an undertone. Do you not need my help anymore? Because the things happening next might not be PG. Jiang Chen shrugged his shoulder. Lin's face turned red as she cursed out whiling, walking out in quick steps carrying her tablet. Pervert. Jiang Chen ignored Lin's bad-mouthing as he quietly waited for her footsteps to disappear. He closed and locked the basement door, took a deep breath and walked to the female assassin. Sun Xiao, that was her name. If one carefully studies at her face, one would discover that her looks did resemble Sun Jiao. As for the differences, it was mainly that the assassin was shorter in height. She was also not as busty compared to her sister, and her face still carried a hint of immaturity. The broken hand was sprayed with medicine mist and bandaged up. Her limbs were locked onto the operating table with all four extended out. Her black combat suit was changed into loose white shirt and pants. Just by judging her current appearance alone, it was hard to imagine her as an assassin. He shook his head as he walked beside the operating table. Looking at the buttons with many unknown functions, he paused for a moment before randomly pressing down a button. The scream almost pierced through his eardrums. Jiang Chen had to cover his ears. Sun Xiao violently shook as her eyes turned white and foam was dripping out of her mouth. A faint pungence appeared. Jiang Chen looked at the light yellow liquid dripping along the operating table and an awkward expression appeared on his face. He only wanted to startle her and wake her up. He didn't think that the button was for electrocuting. But what are the purposes of the other buttons? Chapter 193, Punishment. Sun Xiao woke up from her paralyzed state. She stared fiercely at Jiang Chen, then her eyes began to wander around the basement. Don't bother, there is not a single crystal in this basement. Jiang Chen smiled. What did you do to me? Sun Xiao quickly scanned her clothes. When she realized her black combat suit had been changed, anger appeared between her eyebrows, but the smile he had was no different. Your name is Sun Xiao. Sun Xiao paused for a moment. She looked at Jiang Chen in alert without making a sound. She was confused as to how this man knew her name. Looks like she haven't seen Sun Jiao yet. Where are you from? Why are you assassinating me? Jiang Chen grabbed a chair and sat beside the operating table. A determined and scornful laugh came out of her mouth and she said mockingly. You really think I am going to tell you? How would I know without trying? If possible, I would prefer if you don't make me do cruel things to beauties. Jiang Chen shrugged. Oh? If it is just the electrocuting, you are far away from getting anything. Sun Xiao mocked. She had already been mentally prepared about the consequence of being captured. Have you been implanted with the chip? Jiang Chen didn't get enraged by her tone. Instead, he asked with a calm voice. Only foolish people would be happy about those boring dog chains. The voice was contemptuous. She was not forced by the slavery chip. Sun Jiao was her only family, then this eliminated the possibility of her family being taken hostage. An absolute form of loyalty? Hard to believe, especially on the wasteland without orders. Do you have a sister? Jiang Chen asked the question attentively. Her expression did not change the slightest. I don't have family. Jiang Chen wondered if Sun Jiao would be heartbroken after these words. Her sister already couldn't remember her. For the people injected with the genetic vaccine, the truth-telling liquid is ineffective. If he wanted to obtain information, then it must be interrogation with the help of a lie detector. Seeing her defiant stance, Jiang Chen was troubled. Sun Jiao's sister. Based on relationship, she should be considered his sister-in-law. From any perspective, using torture on an assassin was the best choice to obtain useful information. But Jiang Chen could not do that to his sister-in-law. Then let's make a deal. If you cooperate, I can let you go, and give you 10,000 crystals. Jiang Chen decided to first lure her with money. To his surprise, her stubbornness matched her sister's. Crystals? You don't understand what this is about at all. The voice was filled with arrogance and contempt. Oh? Don't you use crystals as a currency? Jiang Chen tried to make a conversation. Ignorant. Still, the tone was filled with mockery. Jiang Chen was instantly enraged, but his face was expressionless. He only grabbed a long needle injector from the pan beside the operating table. Do you know what this is? Jiang Chen shook the needle in front of her nose as he said slowly. What? Sun Xiao held her neck up as she scorned. Nerve catalyst, it would increase your nerve cell activity by 100 times. In simple words, it could increase your sensitivity 100 times. Jiang Chen lightly pushed the needle as the colorless liquid emerged from the tip. You are a devil. Sun Sharo's expression changed as she tried to move back, but because of her tied-down limbs, her struggle was futile. I don't have time to waste on you. The mutated humans are across the river bank and my people are waiting for my order. You only have two choices right now, be truthful, or be tortured until you tell the truth. Jiang Chen said in menace. This medicine was purchased by Zhou Guoping at the 6th Street black market. 5 milliliter of liquid cost 100 crystals, which signified its rarity. Then why don't you try? Pew! Jiang Chen dodged her spit. He was not angry. Instead, he laughed as he injected the needle right into her vein. Looking into her eyes of despair, he pushed all the liquid into her. Her limbs twitched as if she was having a spasm, then her body began to quiver. It took her a long time before she breathing returned to normal. You filth of a human being. Do you not have the energy to speak? Jiang Chen threw the needle away as a smirk emerged on his face. Her voice was trembling so much Jiang Chen could not make out what she was cursing about. If possible, he didn't want to do this, but since it already started, then it must continue. He pressed his finger onto her right arm. Woo! Are you sensitive to this extreme? Then let me ask you dash. In your dreams. Okay, then imagine what happened today as a bad dream. Next, what should we try? Electrocution? Or high-temperature SPA? Or something else? Jiang Chen pressed a red button. Dash. The agonizing scream reverberated in the entire basement. Lin, with one ear on the door, shivered and she quickly retracted her head. What was this pervert doing? Because of curiosity, when Jiang Chen closed the door, she quietly sneaked back. But just as she put her ear against the door, she heard the agonizing scream. She remembered the words she spoke that provoked Jiang Chen as she shuddered again before carefully leaving the basement. Looking at Sun Sharo with foams in her mouth, both eyes turning white, and her limbs spasming on the operating table, Jiang Chen rubbed his weary temples. Even after the injection of medicine that increased her sensitivity by 100 times, she still lasted 2 hours. Seeing the stains at the edge of the operating table, Jiang Chen held his breath and his expression was somewhat awkward. This seems to be over the line. But he couldn't think of better ways. In the end, he didn't hurt his body. As to the mental trauma, let time work its magic. Another note worth mentioning, he didn't expect her to be a virgin. Jiang Chen picked up the notebook and hastily left the basement. At the door, he met Sun Jiao with a perplexed expression. Is it over? Jiang Chen nodded awkwardly. Sun Jiao didn't say anything and kissed him. Jiang Chen blankly looked at Sun Jiao's closed eyes before he shut his eyes as well. Lips apart. Sorry, Don't apologize, she deserves the punishment. Regardless of where it happens, the fate of assassins is public execution. I am already thankful that you spared her life. The damage on her body could be healed with time. Sun Jiao seemed to have thought this through as there was no more hesitation in her eyes. No, I didn't hurt her during the process. But she provoked me, I turned hot-headed, and then I. As he spoke, Jiang Chen's expression turned more and more awkward. Sun Jiao paused for a moment, then her face turned red and she gently bit her lips. Pervert. Sun Jiao smashed his shoulder and she quickly walked downstairs. Seeing Sun Jiao's figure, Jiang Chen put up his hand wanting to explain something, but then he put it down. There was no use in explaining once the girl sees the chaos in the basement. He will have to wait until the night to explain to her, privately. Perhaps, this was the evilest thing he has done in his entire life. Chapter 194, Klein Particles. The Northern Alliance District. As one of the rare safe havens inside Pan-Pacific area, the description of this place was only applicable when compared to the ruins and shambles. The survivors left on this wasteland migrated north as they established a survivor camp along the Yellow River south of the Golden City. The population density of this area was not high before the war. Therefore, the concentration of zombies was naturally low. Without the direct impact of a nuclear weapon, the radiation level was much lower compared to developed area. The mutant population was also meager. Other than the mutants that migrated from north of the Golden City, this place possessed almost no lethal danger. Stability brought order and prosperity. Despite the harsh environment and the barren lands, they still managed to plot out thousands of acres of arable land on the wasteland. Despite the low production, it ultimately managed to feed the tens of thousands of survivors who fled here. Dictatorship, power, stability. These three words could holistically describe this empire. Although it was named as the Northern Alliance, the armed force that controlled the security of this place of land controlled the life of all the survivors. In the form of military government, they managed the food production and subsequently dictated the entire area. It was rumored that they had been plotting against Wanghai City for a long time already. Of course, Sun Sharo didn't belong to the military government, but rather a religious group based on the northern area, the Dusk Church. They promoted the forthcoming of an apocalypse and fully believed the terror of the apocalypse. But different from the majority of people who lost hope, they also firmly believed that their spiritual leader Bo Yu could lead them to escape the solar system, find a second sun and establish a new home for the humans. It was quite a coincidence. The purpose of their trip to Wanghai City was to obtain the Project Garden of Eden, buried in Fallout Shelter 005, and to acquire the technology to establish the biosphere in space. To be able to enter the planning bureau inside the city and obtain the exact location of Fallout Shelter 005, they were not reluctant to partner up with the mutated humans from the 7th area. All the firearms of the mutated human, as well as the security password of the Carmen Pharmaceutical, were provided by them. But unfortunately, their fate was determined and they were to return empty-handed. Other than metal debris, there was nothing left there. After clearing out the mutated creature that infiltrated Fallout Shelter 005, Jiang Chen blew up the server of the article intelligence and cleaned out anything useful inside. As for the metal box that stored Project Garden of Eden, after Lin copied all the information to the chip inside her head, Jiang Chen destroyed the original copy. Jiang Chen wondered what kind of expression would be on Bo Yu's face once he went through all the trouble to finally enter to Fallout Shelter 005, and only found junks inside. But regardless, even if Jiang Chen knew what happened to Fallout Shelter 005, he could not stand in front of him and say, "I already cleared Fallout Shelter 005 and I have taken everything away." In this case, conflict was inevitable. Jiang Chen could not let the mutated humans inside Qingpu. The leader of the Dusk Church Bo Yu would not give up on entering the city center. When he sent the assassin, he already demonstrated his hostility. As to how the weapons and supplies would be transported to Wanghai, and how she joined the Dusk, Sun Xiaoro didn't have those memories. Since she joined the cult at a very young age and based on the faith that all religions have the same tendencies, brainwashing was an unavoidable step. After all, it was about the crystals. In the end, Sun Xiaoro, in her half-unconscious state, blurted out random things. After attempting to piece together her broken sentences, Jiang Chen could not summarize the information she said. But a keyword she continuously emphasized drew his attention. Klein particles. It was the third time he has heard this word. Ah. Just as he pushed open Lin's door, Jiang Chen heard a sudden whimper. He looked confusedly at the quivering Lin. "What happened to you?" "No. Nothing." The sharp voice seemed to be out of tune. Was she traumatized somehow? Due to Lin being regularly irregular, Jiang Chen wasn't bothered by it and he cut straight to the topic. "About what happened last time, I have a question." Lin cutely gulped as she nodded her head intensely. It was rare that she was this cooperative. Usually, she would start with, "Why do I have to help you?" Jiang Chen obviously didn't know that the disobedient Lin sneaked back when he closed the door and heard some bad things. "Then I am going to ask, last time, it was Tingting that shot out the red light?" Jiang Chen's expression was weird when he said the name Tingting. Although in that virtual world, she entered it in the form of a human and became a couple with him, her original form is of bug. Uh-huh. Lin nodded furiously. "That particle, what exactly is it?" When she heard this, Lin's expression turned earnest. "That's what I wanted to say. I found something abnormal on the surface of the crystal." As she finished saying, Lin ran to the front of the experiment table. She picked up a polished crystal and put it inside the glass sphere of an odd-looking equipment. "This is?" "You won't know even if I tell you, it is a really convenient equipment. Before I always thought you guys collected them because they were shiny and that because they could also replace hydrocarbon as an energy source. But after doing some experiments, this thing is not as simple as it looks." Inside the glass sphere, the dark green crystal began to change color. The complete combustion of the energy of a crystal could release the energy equivalent to 2.47 kilograms of coal. After, it would turn into this form. The crystal lost its shine and changed into a quartz-like appearance. And then? Jiang Chen looked at the crystal keenly. Lin didn't answer Jiang Chen's question. Instead, she asked rhetorically with mysteriousness on her face, "Have you heard of the fourth dimension?" "Fourth dimension? The dimension that includes time?" Jiang Chen had heard this before as he had been through university after all. "Then let me ask you another question, have you heard about energy that belongs to the fourth dimension?" Jiang Chen was dumbfounded. One, because it was too abstract, two, because he didn't know why she suddenly brought up the question. Every matter in this world, including you and me, could be measured by three measurements: length, width, and height. These are all measurements of the third dimension. But if time is added to the list, then the Jiang Chen today would be completely different from the Jiang Chen tomorrow. This would be the fourth dimension. The same as the 1.50 m Lin is completely different than the 2.00 m Lin in the third dimension. If we can add a timeline to energy. Imagine this, the crystal's energy today had been used, but a few thousand years later, its energy would be filled up again. Wait, what about the conservation of energy? Jiang Chen had to interrupt. Of course it is conserved. Because from the start, the Klein particle exists in the fourth dimension, but it is limited to a point that we can't see. But at a certain time point, some Klein particles would fall to the third dimension. In our eyes, the most obvious demonstration would be energized. Because it was too scientifically fictional, despite Lin Lin being extremely slow and detailed in her description, Jiang Chen still felt lost. You can try this crystal, use your power to draw its energy. Remember, the energy amount of this crystal before was 5. As she spoke, Lin Lin put the colorless crystal in Jiang Chen's hand. It was already empty. Charging the interdimensional bracelet with it would be impossible? As he thought this through, Jiang Chen still followed Lin Lin's instruction and put the crystal in his hand. Then, his expression turned to astonishment. He somehow obtained energy from the empty crystal. The amount of energy that supplied the bracelet was no less than the crystal with 5 energy points. Is there energy remaining? Jiang Chen asked in disbelief. Lin Lin shook her head. The energy belonging to the third dimension has been completely exhausted. You could bring this crystal to any production equipment and it could not be used as a source of energy. But just as I had suspected, your interdimensional bracelet could directly draw Klein particles from the fourth dimension. Another way to say this is that you exhausted the energy that could appear in the crystal in the future. Jiang Chen's eyes widened as he stared at his right wrist, the tattoo. No, it could also draw electricity to charge it. It would cost 100 watts of electricity to charge it to full. With crystal, it would only cost 10 energy points. But based on your explanation, one energy crystal, with the energy fallen to the third dimension was equivalent to 2.47 kilograms of coal. 10 energy points of crystal Klein particles must at least exceed 100 watts of electricity by 10 folds. Lin Lin sighed. Think carefully, when you use electricity to charge interdimensional bracelet, did electricity follow your hand to go into the ground? Jiang Chen tightened his eyebrows as he recollected when he charged before. He shook his head. No. Of course not. If that happened, you would be fried. Lin Lin said in frustration. The electricity absorbed by your bracelet is not the electricity generated through electron flowing from the negative end to positive end, but rather it completely consumed the electron itself. It is complicated to explain, but you could interpret it as the particle has completely vanished. Therefore, you wouldn't think that with only 100 watts of electricity, it could manage to travel through space dimensions? In the end, Lin Lin ridiculed. Therefore, crystal. This type of biological formation is a container for Klein particles? That's right. As to how exactly it contained the mysterious Klein particle, I haven't figured it out yet. But crystal is not as simple as it appears to be. Including the female assassin detonating the crystal, as well as the red beam shot up by Tingting, they are all phenomenon of Klein particles releasing its energy to the third dimension. Lin Lin explained with an earnest face. Chapter 195, The Unpeaceful 6th Street. The unrest that happened overnight had been settled. The assassin was caught and captured in the mansion's basement. The boss was free of harm and everyone let out a sigh of relief. Hearing that assassin sneaked into the base, Cheng Weigua, who was responsible for the security of the base, immediately lectured and cursed the soldiers patrolling on the wall. He pulled the knight emblems off of their chest and ordered them to kneel in the snow naked for an entire day as punishment. In this type of weather, to kneel in the snow for an entire day, even with the genetic vaccine, they would lose their life. But Jiang Chen spared them with his words. It was not their fault. Being able to avoid the drones equipped with the infrared sensor, the assassin must be skillful. Through his combat with Sun Xiao, Jiang Chen discovered that she was not to be underestimated. Because of the existence of a powerful enemy, punishing their own just to release anger was no doubt a foolish move. Although Jiang Chen didn't understand the crafts of leading people, he still could think wearing others' shoes. This humiliation will be washed away by your future achievement. If you really feel guilty, then use your loyalty to repay, not your life. Jiang Chen said to the humiliated, naked knights who were kneeling on the ground. Although he spared the patrolling soldiers, the topic of base security was the conversation around the table again. How to maximize the resource available to increase the effectiveness of patrol. Jiang Chen suggested a brutal but straightforward idea. Bulldoze all the buildings within 100-meter radius outside of the base to clear out the area. They would reuse the construction materials as much as possible. If they couldn't, then they would drag 100 meters out and pile it up. Without buildings to take cover, it would not be as easy to infiltrate the base under the dual surveillance of drones and patrols. This issue was finally resolved. The bedroom wall was disfigured by the bullets and required renovation. Therefore, Jiang Chen had to choose a different room to sleep. But Sun Jiao already made the decision for him as she dragged him into her own bedroom. She was ready to use her own body to interrogate him to see what exactly he did to her sister. Of course, there was no sense of blame. However, the fact that her man slept with her own sister made the possessive Miss Sun Jiao displeased. The result of a displeased Sun Jiao was that Jiang Chen had to stay up tonight. The only pitiful person was Yao Yao. After she recovered from the shock, the small lowly worked up the courage to suggest that if he had nowhere to stay, he could stay with Yao Yao. But Sister Sun Jiao was one step ahead, so Yao Yao could only pout at the closed door in disappointment. The next morning, Jiang Chen bumped into Yao Yao, who, just like him, also had dark circles. Feeling greedy over the fact that he didn't manage to fulfill his promise, Jiang Chen suggested a compensation plan, to stay with her for the entire day. Am I really not heavy? Yao Yao turned around asking worriedly. Not heavy, Yao Yao, you are really light. Jiang Chen quickly shook his head. A timid smile appeared on Yao Yao's face and she happily turned to look in the front. She dangled her feet in the air while moving her tiny butt backward to sit in a more comfortable position. But this troubled Jiang Chen. It was not the weight, but the tender feeling scratching on his legs had touched an indescribable place. To simply describe the state between these two people. Inside the bedroom of a girl, Jiang Chen sat on the side of the soft bed, and Yao Yao sat on his legs. He took a deep breath as he tried his hardest to suppress the part of him from raising up. It would be awkward if it stood up. But a faint fragrance entered his nostril because of his deep breath. The tip of his head felt a tingling sensation. Uh-oh? Maybe it was because she felt something hard, or sensed Jiang Chen's trouble. Yao Yao's face began to turn red. Big brother, you don't need to endure this. As she said that, Yao Yao buried her tiny head and silently putting her tablet down. Her feet also stopped dangling. The long shaking eyelashes seemed to be waiting for something. No, it's better to endure. After an arduous internal conflict, Jiang Chen finally suppressed his desire and he decided not to put his claws on Yao Yao. Seeing that Jiang Chen made no moves, Yao Yao pouted her mouth but didn't say anything as she continued to research on her tablet. Jiang Chen let out a relief as he glanced at the dazzling amount of information on the tablet. The hiddenly shocked Jiang Chen also picked up his own tablet off the table and began to take care of his own business. There was a large discrepancy of force at the front line. Based on the information provided by Zhao Gang, it is expected that after 20 days, the mutated human force would be ready to attack. When that happens, the river below the Zhufeng Highway Bridge would be frozen. The mutated humans would launch their attack at that time. On the screen was a visual sent back from the Hummingbird drone. Because of the existence of an anti-air machine gun, the task of capturing video footage could not be given to Chunan. The dense red dots accumulated behind the snow hill on the side of the highway, as well as the anti-air machine guns and cannons covered in white cloths. If Jiang Lin's missile is completed, it would only take one hit to achieve what I want, Jiang Chen fantasized in his head but quickly shook his head. He then called Zhou Guoping from the 6th Street. The phone was quickly picked up. Zhou Guoping's bald head appeared on the screen. Hello? Boss. Do you need me to do something? The respectful voice lightened his mood. I need mercenaries, do you know any you are familiar with at 6th Street? Jiang Chen cut straight to the topic. Mercenaries? Zhou Guoping paused for a moment. Do you know already, boss? No? Jiang Chen's expression was odd, he didn't understand what Zhou Guoping said. There is a rumor recently on 6th Street. It said that the wreckages of a god's cane lie inside somewhere in the city center. Of course, the validity of the information has yet to be confirmed, I am still investigating. If, boss, you are also interested that thing, I can help you investigate carefully. Zhou Guoping said mysteriously. The god's cane? Jiang Chen was lost. Just as he was about to ask what it was, he suddenly recalled the colonel's diary he read in the virtual world. Oh, I almost forgot that you are not from Wanghai City. Zhou Guoping slapped his forehead as he quickly explained, it's a sky-based weapon, also known as an orbital weapon dash. I know, but what does that have to do with the 6th Street? Jiang Chen interrupted Zhou Guoping's explanation, he only wanted to listen to critical information. A mysterious wealthy man sent out quests at major bars and set a reward of 1 million crystals for the wreckage of God's cane. 1 million crystals? Fu*K, is that person crazy? Jiang Chen almost jumped up. Yao Yao looked at Jiang Chen in confusion. She moved her but as she readjusted the way she sat. The amount has been verified by 6th Street officials. The quest had been stamped with the metal seal. With 6th Street's official reputation, this quest shouldn't be fraudulent. Zhou Guoping took a moment. He continued, the mercenaries stationed in the 6th Street have gone insane. There are fewer missions in the winter as all of those people like to spend their days rotting away in the bars. Now someone offered such an astronomical number, even the not-so-strong hunting teams began to make moves. Jiang Chen's eyebrows furrowed. So you are saying, it's hard to hire people now? I wouldn't say it is hard, but the price is definitely higher. That's okay, I'll send you the mission. Also, regarding the god's cane, keep an eye out for me. Yes, boss. Zhou Guoping exaggeratedly bowed. Jiang Chen closed the communication menu and rubbed his nose. He had an ominous feeling. The snow this year would be much colder compared to the years before. Chapter 196, Mercenaries. Snow, as thick as a blanket, covered the desolated street. Other than the worker removing snow, the only noise on the entire street was the freezing northern wind. Oh, not quite. There was still one place that maintained the liveliness of spring. People shouted, celebrated, unleashed their pressure, and spent away their dreary days. This place was the fake leg bar. Although they have only been open for less than 1 month, the high-quality alcohol garnered the hearts of all the survivors. In front of the bar counter, the muscular mercenary had a foot on the chair as he showed off his scars drunkenly. The barely covered lady walked among the dark corners of the bar to wait for the prey of the night. Gamblers put 2 tables together as they played poker and dices. Just based on these few people, this place would appear as no different than the bullet shell bar on the next street. The only difference was, the security here was top-notch, to the point of unbelievable. But, it was not like this when the bar just opened. Alcohol was a lucrative industry regardless of the geographic location. The existence of fake leg bar, without a doubt, ended the reign of bars on the entire street. When people tried the beer with the sweet wheat aroma, no one would be interested in the stuff made with industrial alcohol. Even the wealthy in the inner circle would occasionally drop by to have a drink or two. The high profitability naturally drew the jealousy of competitors. When threatening didn't work, the owner of each bar used all kinds of despicable techniques. Fights, theft, even blackmail. But those who used these techniques obviously underestimated Zhou Guoping's ability. His profession was a bandit. In terms of despicable techniques, he was the master of all. Bribery, assassination, and vandalism. After chopping down 6 dirty overreaching hands consecutively, the people looking for trouble finally became cautiously. Immediately, he spread out a rumor that the boss of the store had a special connection with the group of 10 council members. After hearing the news, people were still hesitating if they should take the risk and finally give up the ill intentions in their mind. They wondered if they should just accept the fact that fake leg bar dominated the market. Other than great security, the design of the bar was also customer-friendly. The 2nd and 3rd floor were renovated into rooms, providing privacy for the males and females that needed their own space and to provide the wary survivors a place to release their deep level of stress. Like usual, Zhou Guoping wore a gray suit. He casually sat at a wooden table as he chatted with the mercenaries that wandered the wasteland. The talkative boss garnered the friendliness from the mercenaries. Even his blad head became a bright spot for this bar. Just like the grandpa in KFC. As to why? It was because if someone talked about something interesting, he would put out a tab that drinks would be on the house. And at the northern area of city center, guess what I saw? I saw a mother of death claw. Damn it, I thought it was just a nuclear crater, so I wanted to see if there was anything worthy inside. Okay, buddy, mother of death claw would only return to nuclear crater when they give birth. In the winter, they would usually hide in a cave. You are bullshit ting too much. A middle-aged man smiled. He took the cigar out of his mouth, shook it in the dust tray. His face had a frightening scar that stretched from his left eye to the right tip of his mouth. Because of this scar, his smile looked daunting. If the one-eyed Lev said that, then it must be. That's right, buddy, the scar on this old fellow's face was left by the mother of Deathclaw. The young man turned red. He took a big gulp of the beer to disguise the embarrassment. Zhou Guoping looked at the chatting mercenaries with a smile. But he was planning in his mind as to when he should speak, and who he should hire. The young man should be new to the scene, at least he didn't look like he was in the profession before. As to the Slavic middle-aged man, he must be a character. It was rumored that he was a fighter jet pilot for CCCP. He didn't get sent back after the war. Instead, he was taken to Wanghai City as the special experiment test subject. When the apocalypse happened, he used his impeccable skills to escape from the lab before he started to wander on the wasteland. But Zhou Guoping didn't plan to hire him. Regardless of how powerful he was only a lone traveler. The boss' instruction was that he needed a lot of people, a team at least the size of 50 people. It was difficult, especially in the environment where everyone was plotting for the city center. But the boss's order is absolute. Zhou Guoping's eyes continually glanced at the door. He was waiting for a person to show up. The oak door was pushed open as a gust of cold wind mixed with ice shards blew inside. The man drinking beside the door shivered because of the wind. Just as he was about to curse at the person who opened the door, he saw the person's face clearly and the swear that was about to burst out of him was swallowed down. Buzz-cut, grey winter suit, he looked rather ordinary. When he stepped into the bar, he was not rowdy like most people. Instead, he sat at the counter with a low profile and ordered a beer. But when Zhuge Guoping saw the person, his eyes immediately lit up and walked over with a smile. It was Luo Yang, the leader of the Black Blood mercenaries. Although he had an ordinary face, he possessed an ability that is not to be underestimated by anyone. On top of that, he had the abilities of the 70 warriors who fight for him. How's the reward today? Zhuge Guoping sat beside him and used a casual tone to chat with him. Terrible, other than snow, there was blood. The northern part of the city center has been completely explored. A zombie nest was even cleared out and there were no signs of the satellite wreckage at all. Luo Yang took a sip of his drink as he warily rubbed his head. Nothing at all? Basically, only when you enter the city center would you start to have some respect for the dumb zombies. It was so dense, and you couldn't see the end. Our truck mulled through the crowd and fired fiercely into the herds of zombies. Even then, we were almost stuck there twice. Have an open mind, buddy. Since that is the world of zombies, even Deathclaw would have to avoid there. Zhuge Guoping comforted him as he took out a pack of cigarette and handed one to him. Luo Yang let out a sigh and lit one for himself. Has there been any good missions recently? You give up on the 1 million reward mission? Zhuge Guoping cracked a smile. I can't use my brother's life to take the risk. I have a feeling that it would be a pit without a bottom. It can't be filled regardless of how many lives were shed. When he heard 1 million crystals, greed radiated through Luo Yang's eyes, but it was quickly replaced by a grave concern. Compared to his colleagues that dove into city center like flies, he maintained some rationality. Let's talk about something happy. I happen to have a mission. How much money? He took a sip as Luo Yang said quite curiously. 10,000 crystals. What? Luo Yang spat the beer out. He looked at Zhuge Guoping with eyes widened. 10,000? Are you sure? I am certain. Zhuge Guoping nodded his head with eyes narrowed. What's the mission? Luo Yang wiped his mouth as he said cautiously. Have you heard the fishbone base? Zhuge Guoping said nonchalantly. I have heard a thing or two. An external forces base stationed in Wanghai City with quite a powerful force. Because the trades with Zhao Corporation were conducted secretly, Zhuge Guoping didn't reveal the boss behind this bar. So, to the outside, the fishbone base was a mystery. Most of the people only knew that there was a base in Qingpu, but even the exact location was unknown. As to why it was obvious, there were a countless number of survivor camps on the wasteland, but most were unfriendly. For example, the Huizhong mercenaries were already wiped out. The Hirer is their boss. As for the mission, it is on here. As he spoke, Zhuge Guoping took out a sheet of paper and put it on the counter. After wavering for a moment, Luo Yang picked up the contract. He scanned the paper and his expression turned more and more stern. This is impossible. What kind of joke is this? Stopping the mutated humans from 7th area at Taifu River. This is asking my men to die. Is that the case? If you think that way, then it is okay, although I personally think it is a pity to give it up. Zhuge Guoping sighed, pretending to feel pitiful as he took back the contract. I don't see where the pity is coming from. You have to have your life to spend money. Luo Yang logit. Do you think the fishbone base will lose? Zhuge Guoping asked with a smile. Based on what I know, there are 3,000-something mutated humans at the 7th area, although they might not be the smartest, they are natural warriors. Luo Yang said. Even if they only bring half of the people, it would be at least 1,500 people. A soldier discrepancy of more than 10 times, only a Dumba's asterisk guess would accept this mission. Mutated humans would squash them like ants. Luo Yang took a big chug as he shook his head in disappointment. He obviously was not disappointed at the fate of the fishbone base, but rather he was sad over the 10,000 crystals that slipped away before his own eyes. But based on my information, the fishbone base has quite a powerful force, such as heavy firearms. Zhuge Guoping smiled. Heavy firearms? Haha. Luo Yang scorned, he didn't agree. He knew a few tactics of mutated humans. The mutated humans occupying the steel factory at the 7th area used steel almost lavishly. With their pure muscle strength, they could carry the thick C-grade steel armor to take charge. It was a nightmare for all light infantries. Heavy firearms? Okay, it was effective. But when all the mutated humans spread out and charge over the wide frozen river, how many shots would the cannons manage to fire? Once the mutated humans pass through the line of defense, no firearms would be useful and the subsequent battle will likely become a one-sided slaughter. As for the exact fighting tactics, as the middleman, I am not sure. But in your opinion, if they have an external force, without a certain confidence in victory, would they fight to the death for Qingpu? Regardless if they have confidence or not, for us, the risk is too high. Luo Yang shook his head. But risk and reward is proportional, isn't that right? Or you wouldn't be taking your men into the city center. Luo Yang's expression was rather awkward when he heard those words. Seeing this, Zhuge Guoping paused and lowered his voice. I have a piece of information here, are you interested? Luo Yang saw the mysteriousness of Zhuge Guoping and his expression turned serious, waiting for him to finish. Other than this 10,000 crystals, there is also another perk. I can release the information to you, but do understand that it is against the rules. For the sake of my business, I hope you can keep this a secret. Ahem, Mr. Zhou, you know me very well. Of course, this is why I found you for this mission. 10% of the profit of a trade route between Qingpu and Luding Town, the type of trade is food. Chapter 197, Gathering a Force. Zhou Guoping brought a good news from the 6th Street. Black Blood mercenaries accepted the mission and mobilized to Taifu River the next day. In addition to the new recruits, a mercenary group of 85 people on the wasteland could be considered a sizable force. When Zhou Guoping threw a bait of 10% food trade profit, Luo Yang agreed without the slightest hesitation. The popularity of the food industry in 6th Street was proven to be a lucrative business. And because of this, Zhao Corporation controlling the entire market had crystals flooding in, and everyone in 6th Street was well aware of this. Hearing Zhou Guoping's words and considering the relationship between the Fishbone Base and Zhao Corporation, it finally dawned on Luo Yang. The food in the 6th Street actually came from the Fishbone Base. Presumably, Zhao Chenwu, that old fox, was controlling the underground sewerage entrance which must be leading to the Fishbone Base. But Luo Yang didn't spread the shocking piece of news out since the less the number of people knew, the more advantageous it would be for him. If he could manage to get a slice of the pie of the trade route to Luding Town, he would accept the mission at whatever cost. With Black Blood mercenaries' reputation, there wouldn't be a problem in transporting the goods from Qingpu to Luding Town situated at the exit of the Yangtze River. With a stable source of income, Black Blood mercenaries' equipment and size would expand and improve, and his prestige would consequently heighten. If he could manage to become a council member, he would be able to join the ranks of the inner circle of the powerful. Despite having accepted the mission, there was one point he was confused about. Since Fishbone Base had a special relationship with Zhao Corporation, why didn't they request help from them? To protect his own interest, Zhao Chenwu would do anything to help, wouldn't he? Jiang Chen had obviously considered this problem. It's just that. How did you get in trouble again? Sitting in the virtual boardroom, Zhao Chenwu smiled wryly. Trouble finds me, Jiang Chen shrugged. 6th Street is not too peaceful these days. I really can't send out some forces to face the mutated humans from the 7th area. Maybe you should consider relocating? Zhao Chenwu pondered for a moment before proposing. Relocate? That means all my efforts would have gone to waste. I have spent almost 400,000 crystals for the construction of the base. At any rate, I won't give up on the base especially since my odds of winning are not low. Then I'll pray for your victory. The batch of Sentinel machine guns, I'm finally able to fulfill the contract under the pressure of the council, and I can deliver it to you tomorrow. Pressure from the higher-ups? When did the council start encouraging a breach of contract? Jiang Chen jested. It is a critical time. What kind of trouble did you guys encounter? Seeing the graveness on Zhao Chenwu's face, Jiang Chen also became serious. Although it is considered a secret, if it was like any time before, the news would spread out regardless. The military government controlling Northern Alliance District has declared war on us, and they are currently on their way. It's them? Have you heard already? Seeing the shock on Jiang Chen's face, Zhao Chenwu shrugged. In order to obtain the space-based weapon wreckage landed somewhere in the metropolis, they came from thousands of miles away to incite trouble. Zhao Chenwu obviously misinterpreted something. The reason why Jiang Chen got shocked was that the organization that partnered up with the mutated humans was also from the Northern Alliance District. Except it was not the military government but a rather strange organization with an even peculiar name, the Dusk Church. The God's Cane? Jiang Chen asked solemnly. That's right. To defend against Northern Alliance's invasion, the Group of 10 Council passed a proposal to create a defense line at the rural area to defend against the invasion. But if it was just this, it wouldn't be so problematic. Zhao Chenwu's face was cast in gloom. He paused before continuing. Although we agreed to fight off the enemy before hunting for the treasure, almost everyone has already been secretly sending in exploration teams into the metropolis. Especially when the news of 1 million crystals mission has spread out, everyone has gone insane. Those fools, who were previously reserved and heading out secretly, are now blatantly sending out their forces and rushing downtown. Just like those gamblers who had completely lost their mind on a gambling table. No one has realized that doing this at this time is foolish. Jiang Chen had no other emotion except for derision. Not everyone is foolish and that includes me. Zhao Chenwu bleak expression stared at the table. If anyone obtains that thing, it would be a nightmare for everyone else. If could dominate all life and death, just like a scepter from God. Saying this, the ruthless businessman had a hint of insanity between his brows. Just imagine this, if there is a sword hanging over everyone's head, who else can resist your reign? It only takes one shot from that tungsten rod that can't be intercepted to silence all voice of resistance. And that sword is now somewhere in the city center, behind all of us. Now, everyone wants to become a person wielding the sword. This damned democracy. Everyone wanted to become the dictator. If there was only a single voice from the beginning, it wouldn't be this chaotic. Asking help from Zhao Chenwu was not possible anymore, but that was to be expected. He already had enough chips in his hands. Without one or two guests, it wouldn't interfere with the fireworks. Counting in the Black Blood mercenaries, the total number of soldiers that could fight on the front line had already reached 200 people. Although there was still a huge discrepancy, he still had his last resort. That was none other than the survivors from Qingpu. After the last expedition, they had been unified under the Fishbone Base banner. After a month of doing business, the relationship between the two parties was further strengthened. Since the beginning, Jiang Chen had always included them in the plan, and he was just waiting for an opportunity. The opportunity to unite everyone, the opportunity to display the might of Fishbone Base. And now, the opportunity had presented itself. Outside of the Fishbone Base, in front of the concrete building used for trading goods, a long lineup could be seen. Long time no see, Zhao Gang. Ma Zhongchen hugged his old friend whom he hadn't seen for a while as he regarded the winter garment on Zhao Gang enviously. The whole set would probably cost 30 to 40 crystals, which would be equivalent to the price of a Reaper rifle. Despite Zhao Gang's usual taciturn behavior, when he saw his old friend, a smile emerged on his face. Jiang Chen called Chen Weiguo back yesterday and was once again sent to the front line. Zhao Gang pulled Ma Zhongchen to the side. He passed him a cigarette while he also put one in his own mouth and then lit it up. How are you doing these days? Same old. Nice smell. What brand is this? The base's own produce. The boss brought it back as part of the benefits for employees. As for its exact origin, Zhao Gang couldn't be bothered about it. The winter is so cold and you guys are quite well off, Ma Zhongchen remarked as he enviously eyed the large caliber machine gun on the wall. It should be us, shouldn't it? The two stared at each other and started laughing. The line in front of the concrete building moved up slowly. People coming out of the room had switched into the winter gear as they entered the base under the supervision of the soldiers. According to the agreement, all the survivors joining the Fishbone Army would receive housing and upper-class citizen treatment, and their family would receive lower citizen treatment. A tear contributing in war and being promoted to knight, their family would also enjoy upper-class citizen treatment. As of today, more than 20 community-sized survivors have joined Fishbone Base. All the people were incorporated into a newly created foreign army with Zhao Gang as the commander. Currently, there were only 81 people in the force, but everyone was a sharpshooter. With a bit of training, they could become a force to be reckoned with. So far, the Fishbone Base's soldiers had exceeded the 300 mark. The day of the decisive battle was gradually approaching. Chapter 198, The Sword Wielder. The God's Cane was formerly known as God's Cane Space-Based Kinetic Energy Weapon System. NATO completed the deployment of the weapon system in 2030. But now its combatability was no longer limited to kinetic energy attack. Over the past 100 years, NATO had continuously perfected this weapon system. Although its core attack was still a vertical strike by tungsten rod bombs, in addition to that, NATO had also added high-power microwave weapon, HPM, wide-area electromagnetic pulse, EMP, as well as particle shields aboard the weapon system. NATO completely transformed it into a hedgehog-like existence, a near-Earth orbit weapon platform. Though Jiang Chen had already experienced the power of this weapon, after listening to Lin Lin's explanation, he still got astonished. Seeing the shock on Jiang Chen's face, Lin Lin haughtily raised her head and paused before continuing, "That is a really powerful weapon. It is believed that to destroy it, PAC launched 27 nuclear missiles to the low Earth orbit, but they were all unfortunately intercepted. Finally, while the God's Cane's HMP was on cooldown after it had just attacked the Holy Shield system, relying on the Aerospace Special Forces attack at 10 crystals cost near-Earth orbit landers, they finally managed to capture it. However, before they even had the opportunity to hold the cane, NATO had initiated the God's Cane's self-destruction program in the hope of destroying it and preventing it from falling into the enemy's hands. So the superweapon that was in the service for over 150 years had turned into a space junk. No one knew this weapon better than Lin Lin. After all, she was a former PAC researcher, so she more or less understood the specifics of the weapon. Wait, space debris? Yeah, is there any problem? Lin Lin asked, tilting her head. Didn't God's Cane fall onto the Earth's surface? Jiang Chen asked with a frown. Of course not, I can attest to that. The post-war World Alliance organization had considered recovering the remains at the near-Earth orbit, but the proposal was not implemented because shortly after, the implementation of space colonization plan was passed with a landslide victory. You know what happened next, 6 colony ships were sent to the deep space. Is that so? Jiang Chen said thoughtfully. Why the sudden interest? Lin Lin was puzzled. What if someone used a supercomputer to determine that the remains of God's cane fell into the downtown of Wanghai City? That's impossible. You've been duped, Lin Lin unceremoniously denied. Did I get fooled? Jiang Chen fell into deep thought. Or did everyone get fooled? This was troublesome. Inside an ancient room, a tripod incense burner stood on top of a table, smoke floated on top of it. A man with gray sideburns leaned against a recliner, his eyes were closed, and he appeared to be taking a nap. Next to him was a woman dressed in cheongsam, and though her face could not be considered gorgeous, she certainly looked graceful. The old-fashioned visage obviously didn't match the high-rise buildings outside the window. To be able to build such a large manor in such a ritzy area of 6th Street, this person must possess an immense amount of power. Indeed, the man on the chair was Chao Jinsong, the owner of Crimson Chamber of Commerce and the head of the Group of 10 Council. There was a knock at the door, and the man slyly opened his eyes. Come. His voice was slow and gentle but without a trace of his old age. The door slowly opened, and a woman walked in. The face was identical to the Cheongsam beauty standing beside him. Almost as if they were cut out from the exact same mold. Other than being twins, there was only one explanation to this: they were clones. 9 members of the council have sent large-scale forces to the metropolis. Among them, the double-headed Bull Chamber of Commerce was the largest with a total of 207 people, 2 spider tanks, and 5 armored vehicles. Hearing his secretary's report, Chao Jinsong's eyes narrowed while nodding. When she finished, he briefly pondered for a moment before asking, "What about that Zhao Chenwu? Did he do anything?" That person was slightly shrewder compared to the other council members, and his sight was not blinded by the dazzling brilliance of the crystals. He deployed scouts to Luzhou, and also sent a team to the city center, but their teams did not advance and just lagged behind our team, the secretary reported as she pushed her eyeglasses up. Chao Jinsong suddenly laughed. The wrinkles that had been etched on his face through the passage of time blossomed and transformed him into a kind, old man. The laughter, however, carried a few strands of menace. Although everyone wants to be the person wielding that sword, it would be interesting if that sword didn't exist in the first place. Conclusive evidence and foreign spying. Just these 2 points alone seem to be enough evidence to prove the existence of God's cane. Is it that time already? Chao Jinsong looked at the smoke above the incense burner and smiled. The expressionless secretary just quietly looked at him, without saying a word. Bring that thing over. It has already been prepared. A trace of a smile appeared on the female secretary's face. She took out the holographic computer pen from her pocket and handed it to him. He took the holographic computer pen, but his forefinger stopped at the start button. On the metal surface, 2 faces were reflected, one old and the other young. The young face belonged to his wife. She was so frail that she couldn't get through the first year. Before she passed away, he promised her that he would bring order to this chaotic wasteland. Afterwards, he would join her down there. After the collapse of all civilizations, a new civilization would be reborn from the ashes. The new civilization would be powerful as ever and rise from the phoenix fire. It would learn from the past mistakes of the ruined civilization and abandon any weaknesses from the past civilization. In this radiation-filled wasteland, not only the mutants' claws and humans' marksmanship evolved, but also things of a higher level had also evolved. 13 years ago, the walls of 6th Street were built. The gathering place built by the survivors of the settlement gave birth to the seed of civilization. However, this seed had been dormant for far too long. Even though the expedition brought prosperity to it, it was only a basic level of prosperity. When it came to one's own interest, the council would engage into endless squabbles. Without a unified voice, nothing would come out of it. He had enough of these endless disputes. The people from Northern Alliance District would perhaps come but definitely not at this time. What they wanted was definitely not the God's cane but something entirely different. 10 years ago, the unification of the Northern Alliance was completed. If this continued, 6th Street would no longer be its match. It would become a mere speck in the history. But everything here was the fruit of his hard labor, and he couldn't bear to end like this. This piece of land needs a dictatorship. Hero or criminal, only history will tell, muttering to himself, Chao Jinsong closed his eyes. Suddenly, he opened his eyes and looked at the secretary in front of him. Qin Lian, could you lend me some courage? The woman didn't say anything and merely put her hand on his. The woman in Cheongsam standing beside him also came over and held out her hand. Taking a deep breath, a crazed expression returned to his face. Then let's begin. He pressed the button. A fire started burning and the manor of the Crimson Chamber of Commerce in the 6th Street was completely incinerated. Rumor had it that it was the conspiracy of Zhao Corporation plotting for the treasure. At the same time, another fire broke out in the center of the city dozens of kilometers away. It was the fire of civil war. Chapter 199, Civil War. What do you think is the boss planning? A soldier wielding a rifle and clad in carbon nanotube armor walked at the forefront of the troops. I don't know. The commander next to him was silent. The tactical helmet hid the expression on his face, but the way he was looking around betrayed the anxiousness in his heart. They were Zhao Corporation's private soldiers. 2 spider tanks, 5 armored vehicles, 4 modified trucks, 20 power armors and 120 soldiers. 80% of their fighting force had been placed on the gambling table. There were only 5 kilometers left before they reached the metropolis. The area was filled with nuclear craters, a place not even the death claws would dare to enter. The order that Zhao Chen had issued was very vague: follow the troops of Crimson Chamber of Commerce, wait for further orders. Just simply follow? The 2 sentries in the front row weren't the only ones who were anxious, but also the squad leader, Chen Wei, sitting in the armored vehicle, looked grave. Staring at the screen of the Wanderer tanks, Chen Wei swallowed. 10-meter long, 3.8-meter wide, and 2.6-meter tall, weighed 112 tons, and could accommodate 3 to 4 passengers. Its main weapon was the 52-type particle cannon and a 2 kg class electromagnetic pulse cannon as coaxial guns. Its whole body was covered with 140 mm thick A-grade steel armor with a built-in high-density supramolecular compartment that could withstand high-energy neutron radiation caused by a neutron bomb explosion, while the particle shield could effectively resist energy weapons attacks. It was practically a moving fortress. A wave of zombies advanced, but under the giant suppression, the only thing the zombies could do was to provide lubrication for its track with its flesh and fat. The thick primary cannon was covered in snow and had never fired a single shot the moment it left the base. The 2 kg class electromagnetic pulse cannon also appeared very dormant and would only occasionally fire whenever it encountered a Roshan. Under the power and influence of this metallic monster, even in the danger-filled metropolis, these 2 forces couldn't provide much resistance. They stopped, the sentry from the front row casually said. It's probably their time to rest. Because the zombies in the forefront had already been cleared out by the Crimson Chamber of Commerce, they didn't even need to fire, so they could casually chat among themselves. The expression under the sentry's tactical helmet gradually turned to that of horror. No, this is odd, there's something wrong with their cannon. Vroom. The sound of a cannon firing drowned his astonished voice. The 2 kilograms bomb easily separated his flesh and ripped through the roof of the armored vehicle. We're under attack by our allied force. Damn it, what do they think they're doing? Take cover. Go take cover in the bunker, quick. Attention everyone. That is not a friendly force, I repeat, that is not a friendly force. Chen Wei's voice began to echo in everyone's communication channel. The forces in the forefront, who were taking cover, immediately began to fire back. The aerodynamic spider tank slid around on the main road. 6 sets of weight-bearing wheels were separated in the middle to form into 4 square-shaped mechanical legs as they quickly began to climb on top of the half-destroyed buildings. The remaining 4 armored vehicles along with modified trucks also promptly turned around the corner, using the terrain to avoid the barrel of the Wanderer's tank. Whereas the infantries in the area searched for shelter while taking out their rifles and rocket-propelled grenade launchers and begun firing back. Because Chen Wei sensed something was amiss from the start, he ordered the team to form a long formation. Although it was much easier to defend against zombies in a square formation, if an enemy attacked at the front, the long formation would allow the force in the back to quickly disperse and minimize the loss. Have they found the remains of the satellite yet? Chen Wei struck at the armor shell as he stared at the image transmitted from the Solidar's tactical helmet. The reckless movement of the tank completely ignored the rocket launchers flying towards it. Even if he had 2 spider tanks as backups, he still didn't have the confidence to win. Permission to fire back. 4 big yellow characters appeared in the center of the screen and a rueful smile appeared on Chen Wei's face. They already started to retaliate. Although he was counting on the boss to stop the war through diplomacy, it now seemed like they have to fight through it. Boom! 2 rounds of shell were fired at a 50 degrees angle from the roof of a half-destroyed building. With an orange flame trail, it smashed onto the Wanderer tank's turret before it got deflected into the window of an abandoned shop. The shell was deflected. The eerie blue electric arc had enveloped the shell of the tank but didn't even leave a dent. Damn it! That's an electromagnetic reactive armor. Specially designed against piercing shells, through a unique interaction field, the metal shell could reach superconducting state after breaking through a certain speed threshold. Under the powerful magnetic field outside the armor, according to the Meissner effect, Shells that had become superconductors would produce an enormous magnetic field in the opposite direction, thereby attenuating its kinetic energy and shifting the projectile angle. This armor had a miraculous use against the conductive material of the electromagnetic cannon shells. It also had certain effects on the artillery steel core armor-piercing shells. Change into insulation shells. Roger. The Wanderer tank quickly retreated, and because of the angle limitation of the cannon, it could only aim at the spider tank on the roof with an increasing distance. However, the spider tanks occupying a favorable terrain wouldn't allow its plan to succeed. So while on the move, they fired at the metal monster on the road. Zombies, Crimson Chamber of Commerce, and Zhao Corporation. These three giants engaged with each other. With the heavy armors leaving the battle, the zombies that weren't blocked lunged at the two parties exchanging fire while howling and screaming. If they were just fighting with the zombies alone, these well-trained soldiers would definitely not let these dumb things get closer. Today, however, everyone was not just facing the threat of zombies, but the enemy's bullets as well. Everything devolved into an utter chaos. Damn it, their firepower is too suppressive. We need backup. Leaning against the side of the bunker, while shooting at the incoming zombies, the soldiers in carbon nanotube combat suits roared at the communication device they're clutching. Someone's down, medics. Damn it, it's the Death Claw. Zombies had broken through the line of defense. Requesting armored vehicle support. Negative. The enemy's anti-armor units have yet to be cleared. Unable to enter the battle. Turning off the noisy communication channel, Chen Wei rubbed his forehead. A ferocious glint appeared on his face and his eyes were locked on the several big characters on the screen. Available support, Disaster, 32 cruise missile. Just now, he finally understood the meaning of the phrase, caution, that Zhao Chenwu left before leaving. From the start, the boss had already suspected that Crimson Chamber of Commerce had gone rogue. This type of limited superweapons was definitely not used in dealing with the zombies. If Crimson Chamber of Commerce's trump card was the Wanderer tank, then the trump card of Zhao Corporation was this. The bombs sold to Fishbone Base were only old technology, while the more powerful weapons have always been kept under Zhao Chenwu's control. Without any hesitation, Chen Wei pressed the launch a button. Without a warning. On a barren field 100 kilometers away, the flat ground was suddenly split open. After the item used to camouflage was removed, the metal plate hidden under the layer of the soil was gradually separated. This was the missile well left by Pac. To escape air raids, this improvised one-time-use missile silo was common on this piece of land. The light blue signal light extended from the top to the bottom of the silo. Missile Silo 72 is about to fire. Workers, please take shelter immediately. The electronic voice announcing its launch had scared the mutant mice that were biting the roots of plants away. In a flash, the smoke burst and instantly covered the whole area. The 10-meter-long missile pierced through the sky filled with radiation dust. 10 seconds before arriving at the target location. Commander, please set the target. Taking a deep breath, Chen Wei's eyes tightly locked on the rampaging Wanderer tanks. Using his finger, he dragged the crosshair onto the red box. Target lock successful. Attention. Attack A, Attack B, immediately move away from the target area. Roger. After receiving the command, the spider tanks quickly jumped off the building. The 6 pairs of weight-bearing wheels formed together, reverting back to driving mode. Seeing that the enemy units suddenly retreated, the Wanderer tank, realizing that it might have been targeted by long-range weapons, immediately fired heat-induced bait bombs and electromagnetic decoy targets. It then shifted into overdrive and crashed into the side of the building. The solid concrete wall disintegrated like a piece of paper under the impact, as it attempted to use the 10-meter-tall building as cover. But it was too late. A trail of gray smoke instantly fell from the sky. Suddenly, everything dimmed down. The arc-shaped flames instantly ignited. The shockwave didn't just blow away the concrete blocks and scattered the particles shield away, but also the armor shell as well. The buildings that survived the aftershock of the nuclear blast had collapsed due to the direct impact of the cruise missile. The Disaster 32 cruise missile was designed based on a fictitious aircraft carrier, so taking care of a tank was definitely no big deal. Even those from thousands of meters away felt the tremor of the ground. The flames on the horizon made the thick snow lose its color and deafened the continuous gun-firing shots. The tide of war was instantly reversed. The Crimson Chamber of Commerce that just lost its strongest armored unit was immediately under heavy fire suppression by the 2 spider tanks. Aside from the Wanderer tanks, they didn't bring more armored units, only 30 infantries and dozens of powered armors. Seeing that his own soldiers had the upper hand, Chen Wei slowly let out a sigh of relief. Zhao Corporation had already won the battle. Although the price was expensive. The 6th Street Council was probably making a ruckus at this moment, but it was something not for him to worry about. Gunshots were getting sparse, the soldiers of the Crimson Chamber of Commerce fought valiantly, preparing to fight to the bitter end. But this still could not change the outcome of their defeat. Enemy units have been cleared. Hearing the communication by his ear, Chen Wei was relieved. Regroup. Set up a blockade to block the zombies, recuperate, and prepare to head back. What is that? God. Two soldiers opened the trunk of the captured armored vehicle. Staring at the screen, Chen Wei's pupil contracted. Nuclear bomb. Staring at the distant mushroom cloud, Chao Jinsong's face flashed a touch of mockery. At the moment, he was standing on a barren land a few kilometers away from the wilderness, and there was a pickup truck parked next to him. Sheesh, you finally used disaster, 32? He shoved the binoculars in his pocket, shook his head, and returned to the truck. Whether or not the sword of Damocles exists, the sword hanging above his head had disappeared. The price of a Wanderer tank in exchange for the trump card that scared the living daylight out of him. A nuclear missile and 72 lives in exchange for 80% of Zhao Chunwu's force. And Wanderer tanks, he still had 4 of these left. If it had been a poker game, then the outcome of the battle had already been decided. Chapter 200, at the same time. Did you hear the noise? Sun Jiao raised her eyebrows as she asked Jiang Chen. The snow was thick, as the two were standing on the bank of Taifu River. I think so. Did something explode? Jiang Chen stared towards the east, but the flurry blocked his vision. There were 2 explosions, it was hard to tell which one was louder. It seemed to be from somewhere in the far distance. Let's not be distracted anymore. Sun Jiao sighed, her eyes narrowing while staring across the river. The party is about to start. You are right. Jiang Chen smiled. All combat units have been sent to the front line. 271 soldiers, 8 tigers, as well as 15 modified pickup trucks. The Black Blood mercenaries have already sneaked past the river as they had taken cover on a snow hill a few kilometers away. Everything was prepared. He dragged the scarf away from his neck as white mist emerged from Jiang Chen's mouth. Let's start. Understood. My commander. Sun Jiao naughtily blinked her eyes before she turned around to step into the T3 power armor. The night began to fall as the snowfall slowed. The searchlight in the center of the camp, as well as the 4 corners, shook rhythmically and lit up the snow hills around them. Rows of mutated humans carried rifles as they patrolled their camp. Their steel armor, lined with fur, prevented their skin from being in direct contact with the steel. There were around 50 trucks parked on the empty lot in front of the camp. The daunting gun and cannon barrels create a metal forest. White sheets covered them as they blended into the snow. They didn't even consider the enemy across the river an opponent. In their eyes, only a round of attack would allow them to drag those cowards out of the trenches and shred them into pieces. Shooting was not their strong suit. Because of their fat finger, to make it easy to shoot, they had to saw off the trigger ring. This was also why they preferred machine guns, as most machine guns were not as small as rifles. Due to their build, they didn't need to consider the large, heavy firepower and weight of the guns. The last group of soldiers had arrived at the base. Once the ice is strong enough to withstand the weight of their armor, they would sound the horn to charge. But that day will never happen. Did you hear something? The mutated human at the gate of the base tilted his head and looked at his comrade. The mutated human raised his eyebrows but didn't seem to find the source of the noise. Look. What is that? There were screams, and a mutated human pointed at the dark sky. Something had fallen from the radiation dust, it carried a visible trail of flame and began to accelerate. But they didn't have more time to think about it. Boom! The searchlight in the center of the base and the 4 corners shattered with the noise. The light that shined on the 4 sides instantly faded. At that moment, a few trails of orange flame rose in the sky and exploded. The blinding white light turned the base into daylight. It was a lighting shell. Damn it, it's an enemy strike. The mutated human standing at the gate roared out before he took out the light machine gun behind his back and began to fire at the snow hill. The mutated humans didn't expect that the human taking cover behind barriers would attack them during the night. The mutated humans were not worried by the human's night strike, rather, they felt a sense of excitement. They are asking for their own death. But that kind of confidence didn't last long. Under the cover of the lighting shell, a missile with a trail of red flame had fallen from the sky. In the terrified vision of all mutated humans, it landed in the middle of the base. Boom! Flames instantly erupted. It engulfed the vehicles covered by white, the mutated humans preparing to enter the vehicle, as well as the supplies hidden under the snow. The merciless chain explosion started. It played a symphony inside the mutated human's base. Running, screaming, desperately trying to remove the scorching steel armor, and falling when out of energy as they waited for the Flame Grim Reaper's cultivation. The steel debris and snow were blown into the air as they melted into liquid in the heat wave as if it was a firework celebration. It was living hell. No one suspected the rats across the river possessed a cruise missile. Of course, it was obviously not a cruise missile. It was only a rocket equipped with 1,000 kilograms of concentrated explosives. 1 kilogram was 20 crystals, and along with the cost of the missile, the mega firework cost Jiang Chen 30,000 crystals. But so what, compared to the effect it caused, the 30,000 crystals were well spent. Gazing at the fire across the river, Jiang Chen pulled out the flare gun, and he shouted at the top of his lungs. Attack! Roger! The red flare broke through the night sky. 8 homing voices rose as the 5 kilograms bombs smashed into the base across the river. The shock of the missile explosion had blown away the snow piles. There was no cover between the two forces. With the range advantage, the electric pulse cannon unloaded its firepower. The infantry with their rifles stepped out of the trenches. Under the leadership of 6 power armors, they all charged at the opposing river bank. The black blood mercenaries, who've crossed the river, engaged in crossfire with the mutated humans already. The rain dropped like lightning shells lit up the night sky. Because the explosive was made of magnesium powder and other oxidants, the flames didn't fade away for a long time. Under the intense light, the position of the mutated humans was fully exposed. But it was a problem even for the mutated humans with rifles to aim at the target in the dark. They could only respond by firing randomly into darkness. Seeing the battle visual on his tablet, a smile emerged on Jiang Chen's face. The anti-air power had been completely dissolved. The unexpected missile had not only wiped out half of their force, it completely disrupted their command structure, which forced them to fight on their own. The mutated humans wielding armors were strong, but only in the front. On an open field, if they were surrounded with bullets flying in all direction, mutated humans without formation would only be slaughtered. The infantries fired with pace as they pushed forward under the cover of cannons. Within the virtual reality training system, they have practiced this countless amount of times. Sun Jiao led the 6 power armors with their high mobility as they roamed among the mutated humans to prevent them from gathering information. Seeing the swiftness of this girl's action, even if she was in a metal box, recalling her shyness under himself, the feeling was indescribable. With a face slightly red, Jiang Chen coughed as he got rid of all the unhealthy idea in his mind. The battle was approaching its end. The soldiers used their gun barrels to smash the half-dead mutated humans as they finished the kill off with a dagger. There was no need for hostage. Death was the best fate for these monsters. He retracted the tablet as he got in the armored vehicle. Cross the river. Yes, Commander. As the leader of the base, Jiang Chen began to realize he could no longer fight like a soldier on the front line. Since Fishbone Base had already passed the initial growth phase where they lacked people, he gladly accepted the perspective Sun Jiao insisted, which was to stay in the back and wait for the battle to end. The gunshots in the distance began to die down. The armored vehicle drove over the bridge. The northern wind carried a hint of warmth. Jiang Chen, who sat on top of the car, looked at the remains of the mutated humans' base after the explosion, but his mind had already drifted elsewhere. This was where the mutated humans stored most of their supplies. Even if there were still 2,000-something mutated humans there, this major loss would render them unable to fight another battle. These supplies were transported from the Northern Alliance district 1,500 kilometers away. It must not have been easy. Now that these supplies are destroyed, and the spy Sun Shero was captured by Jiang Chen, what would the dusk that suffered defeat do? Speaking of this, the defender had no action at all, as even Jiang Chen almost forgot that he had an alliance. What are they planning?